Hi, Jamie. How are you?
I am good. I am excited, a little nervous. Big day tomorrow.
No, it's only St. Patrick's Day. Come on, what's there to be nervous about?
No, yeah, no, St. Patrick. It's also my sister's birthday.
Okay, well, that you should be nervous about. Did you remember to get her a present?
I always send her love, and of course. Although I am in Dallas right now, so I'm gonna have to make it up to her when I get back.
Aha. Yes, indeed. But now you got nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about tomorrow. This is
I appreciate that.
this
Yeah.
is quite an undertaking that you did. For
Oh yeah.
for
I did not. Yeah, I did not know what I was getting myself into when we wrote the script. That's for sure.
first feature directorial, and you choose a tornado, and of course we have seen tornado movies, Twister being the seminal one up to this point, and also 13 Minutes that also starred Anne Heche, as well as your film now does. What were you thinking to decide you're not a big studio, you don't have a ton of money behind you? Why in the world would you want to start your feature directorial career with a tornado movie?
That's a very good question. There's definitely a little naivete to it, and I think that was essential because if I had more experience or this wasn't my first film, I may have not followed through with it, and I think that having this being my first go round as a feature length director, there was kind of a will to just have to get it done as a first movie. Being a first-time director is probably one of the hardest glass ceilings to crack through. And the big thing that I learned over, the last 15, 20 years, at least since I graduated school and college, is today you kind of have to write to direct. I think the age of, directors that did their craft as directing, and you had writers that just wrote, I feel like that era is over. So for me, I knew if I was going to break into directing movies, I would have to write as well. And I was very fortunate to find a story that I was passionate about because, I think the key thing is you have to really love and care about the material that you direct, because the journey for me, it's been now almost 4 years, and it's been relentless and persistent, and I think that was a key measure to it all.
What is it that about supercells, about tornadoes that makes you so passionate?
I think my childhood, the story is very personal to me. I grew up in Montreal, Canada, and, you would know a lot of people from the Northeast, you call them snowbirds. They spent a lot of time down in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my weather experience as a kid would be with my mom, and we'd watch thunderstorms roll in over the ocean, and I was just mesmerized by lightning my entire life. I always had a camcorder. Either my mother was doing home videos with the VHS tapes, or I would take the camera from her, and I would film the skies and create these mixtapes when I was, I'd say, a teenager. And I would, back then, we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have the ability to quickly watch, storm footage. So I would have to do tape-to-tape editing and play VHS highlights from previous vacations in Florida. So I've always been fascinated with the sky. And then, my mother eventually got sick with Alzheimer's. And I wanted to, I just wanted to escape was going through a pretty heavy breakup, and I was years, if not a year away from losing my mom completely. And my girlfriend, who now is my fiance, I convinced her to go storm chasing with me as kind of an escape. And I went with no intention of writing a story about it. I just went to kind of get, back in touch with my childhood, and watching the sky and seeing the size of these storms that roll in the Midwest up close and personal was life-changing for me. And it was very impressive, and I got addicted. And there is an addictive aspect to it when you see something so dangerous yet so beautiful up close. I went back a second time with a good friend of mine, and then it was soon after that I said to myself, well, why hasn't there been a movie about the storm chasing community since 1996? And that's the thing, is it's then it was not 2019. But there hasn't been a film about storm chasers. There's been movies about weather and global warming and the end of times, Roland Emmerich and whatnot. But there hasn't been this intimate story about the people that do the chasing. And that really was the seed to everything.
I completely understand your fascination with lightning out over the ocean and storms rolling in. I grew up in Philly, but I spent my summers at the Jersey Shore with my grandparents, and nothing thrilled me more than to sit out there and, watch lightning, watch the storm come in. It always fascinated me. So I totally get that. I think it's very cool that you went out storm chasing, personally. Given your personal experience, you write this script, you've got personal experience into storm chasing, but what other kind of research did you do into the weather conditions and all? Do we have scientific accuracy within the dialogue?
Absolutely. That was the fun part for me, was basically befriending the storm chasing community. I got very close with a lot of different personalities in the community. It's a very niche community, but it is bigger than it was. Of course, Twister changed everything and made it kind of, I would call it, a Disneyland experience in the Midwest, where you have people paying a lot of money to go on tours, just like in the film, traveling from Australia, UK, all over, and paying for a 10, 11-day excursion, like a safari in the Midwest. And I met with tour owners, I met with meteorologists, I met with pure storm chasers and forecasters for the National Weather Service. It was so important for me to make sure that the film was accurate. Now, I understand that 98% of the audience, all of that detail will probably go right through, right over their head. But I don't know, maybe it was the fact that I felt like a storm chaser myself, that I wanted to do justice to the accuracy. So every screen you see in that film, the software used, the situations that the characters get themselves in, they were all consulted with the National Weather Service, NOAA, storm chasers alike, scientists. Even the device that William has in the movie, it's a sonar device, and it's an actual device that Dr. Elbing from OSU created, which is basically picks up the vibrations that tornadoes have on the earth when they make tornadogenesis, which is when they touch down, they cause this frequency that you can pick up sonically. So I was captivated by the science, and I wanted to make sure that everything in the film was as accurate as possible.
I love the science aspect of this film. That adds so much. You didn't just make stuff up out of the blue. I really appreciate the level of authenticity and the science that you brought to this, Jamie. For my money,
thank you.
That's really what makes this film as riveting and exciting as it is, especially in those storm chasing moments when we are talking science, and when Roy is explaining some basic theories to Will, things like that. Lay people can understand it.
Yeah.
Lay people can understand it because of the way you have structured the film. You give us some baby steps and then plunge us right into the thick of it, or into the bear's cage, as the case may be. So I think that's very important. I'm so glad that you included that. But now, did it occur to you while you were writing this script how you were actually going to shoot it and pull this off from a visual perspective?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny. Like I said, I was very naive. It's my first film. Unbeknownst to me and my writing partner, I should give a lot of credit to Anna Elizabeth James, because she, as a co-writer, we teamed up and wrote the script together, and I will give her a lot of credit because she has an ability to simplify the tech aspect and the academic aspect, what you call inside baseball of weather, and she was very essential on how to spoon feed and help me spoon feed the audience with all this education and science. So I have to give her a lot of credit as well. But yeah, unbeknownst to us, we're writing what should be a $50 to $60 million film, if we're going to be honest. And of course we get a fraction of it because this is an independent movie, a debt finance film, if you will. And I guess if I was more of an experienced director, I would look at the script and I would probably slash it apart and pull out 20 pages and really be ruthless. But I guess in this way, I kind of said to myself, nah, I'm just going to do it. And with that type of, I guess, attitude, I put everything. I put my entire will into trying to make this feel like a blockbuster, even though it had the independent means. I would say necessity was a big thing for me to achieve this, and a big strategy. And of course, we can talk about Spielberg, but famously, Jaws, the whole concept was not showing the shark.
Right.
And I think the same thing rings true with this, is we didn't have the money to show all of the details and that scope that you may get if you had $50-100 million and you had unlimited CGI budget. And I think that works for the movie, and in a way makes it a little bit more terrifying, because for me, if I kept the experience subjective and I kept the camera in the van with our main characters, very similar to how you would actually experience this on the road with these storm chase tour companies, it allowed for a sandbox to limit me to only capture what was necessary for that subjective experience. And I think that benefited, I guess, the viewing experience a lot.
Well, I agree with you, and this goes all the way back to Hitchcock, who firmly believed in not showing, because to not see something is much more terrifying. Especially, we've got hailstorms. We're talking, to borrow from the film, gorilla hail, and
Right.
the sounds that we hear of the windshields breaking and the hail landing on top of the van. I mean, just that in and of itself is scary as hell. You give us very little of what's outside. We see the dents as the hail is rapidly hitting the top of the van, but we're not really getting the magnitude of all of the hail until after it passes, and then we go outside and you can see these huge grapefruit-sized hail on the ground. And I have to say, it looked like in the one scene, were we employing some liquid nitrogen there to get that beautiful frosty smoke effect?
Yes, you're correct. In fact, I guess the wide shot you're referring to, I think those were styrofoam balls that represented hailstones, and we, that effect is in weather and science. There's something called hail fog that happens, and it's when the ice melts so rapidly it creates a mist, and you'll have really cool experiences in the field where you run into this heavy fog. But yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, very lucky to work with a really cool special effects team. My production designer, Travis Darwin, he is exceptional. It was, the creative team I had around me was very tight. There was a lot of USC alum on this film. My cinematographer, Andrew Jarrett, we've been working together since film school. My composer, Corey Wallace, we've been working together since film school. Even my co-writer, Anna, we started in film school together. So there was a alma mater, experience in the making of Supercell.
Mm-hmm. I love that effect of the mist coming off the hail. I just thought that just was so cool visually. But this begs the question, because of the visual nature of the film, with so much lightning, lots and lots and lots of lightning here at various points in the film. Some of the skies are absolutely beautiful, the colors, the clouds. So I'm curious, where did reality begin and visual effects begin with all that lightning and the clouds? Because the way it's interwoven is really gorgeous.
I appreciate that. That again, that was the fun part. And I knew going into the experience, we didn't have money to do CGI. And my stance on CGI is I find CGI numbing. And I do not like the direction the film industry has gone since the advent of computer-generated imagery. Of course, it all started with ILM and what they did with George Lucas, eventually with Jurassic Park, and stemming from that, there was always this idea to have CGI and VFX lend itself in an invisible way so that we can experience things as tangible and tactile as we can. And today, I feel like everything is done in post. So the cool thing with Supercell is I knew that, one, I couldn't afford CGI, but that's okay because I wouldn't even want to heavily pursue CGI even if I had the money, because the idea was we were going to use real footage that was taken by actual storm filmmakers that had been collecting unbelievable shots of the sky and tornadoes for the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. And my collaborator, his name is goes by Pecos Hank Shima. He's a storm chaser and filmmaker. He has 10 years of storm footage from very high quality cameras, and in the post process, so we would shoot the film during blue sky days, which was a little bit jarring for some of the talent. Of course, we brought in as much practical effect as we can to create tangible chaos, whether it be Ritter fans blowing at 60 mile per hour, rain machines, dust. The idea was that for when we were in it, I would try and make it as chaotic as possible so that the audience, you wouldn't be able to tell what was happening, 50 feet beyond the lens. And of course, when we had to see the skies, that was VFX comping that we did have to do. But the nice thing about it was we weren't going to create CGI skies. We were going to use the footage that Hank gave me, whether it be a modest clouds, whether it be a funnel spawning or a supercell, and then using the horizon line, we would stitch the sky with the foreground plate that we shot in Montana.
That's fabulous. But I got to tell you, I love the practical effects. I can just see any kids that might see this film, they're all going to go out next time it's windy and they're going to take bags of popcorn and throw popcorn to the wind.
I hope so.
That was number one. Will was just like a little kid in doing that, because what little kid isn't going to take stuff and throw it in the wind and see if it flies away? I really thought that was very clever. Very clever.
Thank you.
How difficult was the editing for you and your editor, RJ Daniel, Hannah, to get the timing right on this one? Because we need to feel the urgency of the storm and the urgency of leave your food on the table and run out to the vans. And this is something that we were all introduced to with Twister, when people would take off running when there was word of a storm coming. And now we see it here more in depth from the real personal standpoint. So I'm curious, getting that urgency and then holding on the storms themselves. so that we can really appreciate the magnitude of what we're seeing. It's a fine line that you and RJ had to walk there.
Yeah, pacing was definitely was a heavy lift. Obviously the script was a blueprint. It dictated something, and then we went out and we filmed. And of course, this was a 20-day shoot. Dramas, usually get 20 days, maybe a little bit more. For something with this amount of action, stunt work, special effects, there was a lot of omits that happened and things that had to be recreated in the edit, and Daniel was a good collaborator in that as well. You have to understand a lot of the driving shots where the van's out in the plains, we weren't able to shoot during principal production, and there's a whole sequence that takes us into Act 3, where Zane Rogers, Alec Baldwin's character, as a surrogate father, takes William out there in that final storm, and that whole stretch, a lot of it was black. We didn't have those shots, and to have to go back out with the van with just a couple crew members and to fill these holes that were pretty monumental sequences, it was very challenging. To go back to, I think, what your question was, yes, there's a lot of this movie, even though it's an action film, at the core of it, it's heart. It's a story about a family and about a boy who over the course of the film, steps into his own manhood. And I hope that I earned the moments where we could sit back and tell stories and to live with the characters, and perhaps there might be areas where it might feel a little prolonged, and that was. It was something that was difficult in the editing to try and figure out. It's my first film, and I still question whether or not the balance and the pace is correct in the film. But I guess the audience will have to decide that.
Mm-hmm. I love the fact that the journey that we really go on is Will's journey. And you keep us in that POV as he's absorbing so much of his character. And Daniel does a beautiful job of this, as Will. It's observing and listening. It's watching and learning, just as the audience is. So we are experiencing really what he's experiencing. And at the same time, he is getting bolder and coming more into his own. And you pick up what we saw in the prologue, opening prologue, of his fascination getting greater and greater. And I like that journey. And you keep us on that journey. And then you fill the film with some incredible characters. Skeet Ulrich as Roy Cameron. Skeet is amazing. And watching the dynamic between he and Daniel as Roy and Will is beautiful to see. Alec Baldwin, what can we say about Alec Baldwin? It's like when you wrote the character of Zane, you were thinking of Alec Baldwin. Anne Heche, for her to be in another, she goes from volcanoes on Wilshire Boulevard to twisters and tornadoes, and it's just amazing. I'm so tickled that General Hospital fans have just been bemoaning the loss of Johnny Wactor since his character was killed off. And this is, other than, I think, an Ozempic commercial on television, drug commercial, I think this is really the first time that they're going to have a chance to see him back on a screen again. So you've done a wonderful job with the casting and in crafting these and in filling the niche for each of these characters and what they need to bring to the story. I'm curious how challenging casting was.
Well, I appreciate all that, and Johnny. Just to first say something about Johnny. Johnny Wactor and I go back quite a bit, and he was on the second Storm Chase with me before the concept of Supercell ever entered my head.
Wow.
He came out, and I would always bring a camera with me. I would just shoot pictures and video, and it was putting him in front of the lens that inspired me to want to do a story about storm chasers. So I would say Johnny was a pretty big seed in the development of the whole thing, and I just had to find a place for him, and I was so happy he got to be in what is my favorite moment of the film, is that really brooding, beautiful moment with Alec Baldwin in the motel room when we see Zane's humanity for the first time. He takes his hat off and he has this honest conversation with William. So that was exciting. The cast, unbelievable. How lucky am I as a first-time director to be able to work with Alec Baldwin and Skeet Ulrich. It was a dream come true. You know, Alec obviously jump-started the whole thing. When he signed on, everything sped up. You know, for me, it was important that both Roy Cameron and Zane Rogers, you know, they both represent surrogate fathers for William's character. Of course, William loses his father in the prologue. And, you know, he's kind of bouncing between the two men who both have their own philosophies on life. And, you know, I do think Skeet did a wonderful job, you know, in a way becoming more timid. Because, you know, Skeet traditionally, he's a lot more eye-catching. He's a very attractive guy. You know, you've seen him in Riverdale. Obviously, you've seen some of his, in the original Scream, he's unbelievable. You know, the big thing with Skeet is how do I transform him into more of a timid scientist, right, who's reserved, who gets beaten down by Zane Rogers constantly, and in his way has to stand up on his occasion and step up and be, you know, in a way his own man. The first thing we did with Skeet is we shaved his head, which was so exciting. You know, and that was, and I'm so fortunate he agreed to it. I mean, he just really stepped in. He's also a very physically fit specimen, and I didn't want him to. I needed Alec to, you know, Zane to be obviously more of an alpha specimen, and so what we did was in wardrobe. We fitted Skeet with clothing that was about 2 sizes too big, so he looked like he swam in his, you know, in his button-down and his cargo pants. So that was so much fun, you know. And, of course, you know, she connected immediately to the story of my mom, her being a mom of 2 boys. You know, the big thing I remember is after our initial phone call, you know, she was very broken up about when I told her about losing my mom, and we agreed that, you know, she was going to do her best job to try and bring my mother back to life through Quinn, which I thought was beautiful. And I mean, of course, it's a very personal journey for me, myself, you know, writing myself as William. So to have them all kind of just jump on board and commit themselves to this story, I felt invincible because casting is 90% of directing. And when you're able to cast, I don't want to see your jobs done, but it makes it so much easier, especially when you only have 20 days.
What happened to the Mustang? The last time we saw that beautiful Mustang, it was abandoned in a parking lot.
Well, that Mustang needs to be abandoned because that Mustang rarely worked on set. It was awful. That engine, I don't know what it is with classic cars, but they're gorgeous to look at and they rarely work ever. I will say this is a little inside BTS moment, but that scene where Harper teaches Harper teaches William to drive, that car had to be pushed by the producers because the engine wasn't working.
Well, they pushed extremely smoothly.
Yes, they did.
Well, producers have to be good for something.
Exactly.
I would be remiss not to ask you, Jamie, about your score here and what you were looking for from Corey in developing the score.
The score was music to me is one of the most essential parts of filmmaking. I can't think, I can't write, I don't feel unless I hear a melody in the back of my mind. And I really challenged Corey, and we started working working together well before the script was finished. And he, he volunteered his time. We weren't paying him at the time. As a friend, he was helping me out. And the whole goal was, why is it that we don't hum our favorite scores like we did in the 80s and 90s? Why is it that movies have shied away from great orchestral music like we had 20, 30 years ago? So for me, call it a love letter to the era of movies that I grew up watching. I wanted a memorable theme and a memorable score for this film, and Corey was able to execute that, and I'm very grateful for our collaboration on the movie.
One last question for you, Jamie. Now that the film is ready to hit the world tomorrow, as you look back on it, what did you learn about yourself as a filmmaker, as a director, that you can now take forward into your future projects?
Everything. I mean, the lessons I learned on Supercell are endless. Everything from how to approach structure and writing and storytelling to scheduling and giving like important scenes more time in the schedule that need to be shot properly, to tricks of post. I mean, I can't say that there was any single one lesson. All that I can say is, doing Supercell has taught me so much that I'm so eager to apply on the next movie, because it's constant growth and there's constant failure. By no means do I feel that Supercell was some great success. I look at the film and I see a lot of problems with it, but I think that's normal, and I can't wait to have the opportunity to make another movie and apply everything I learned from Supercell for that.
So will we move on to hurricanes or something like that now? Floods, other weather-related phenomena?
My next focus right now is actually on seashells, and I'm writing a screenplay, which is a grounded sci-fi about a small beachside community in Florida that come into contact with seashells that connect them to the afterlife,
Ooh.
which I'm super excited about, and that's what's next for me.
Okay, that sounds really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, this one's been on my mind for almost 2 years now, so I'm pretty eager to move on from tornadoes to seashells.
Just think, if there's a tornado that hits on a beach, it's going to be sweeping up all those seashells, scattering them into all kinds of parts unknown.
Yeah, it'll be the Herbert James Winterstern universe of natural phenomena.
That's it. Jamie, this has been so wonderful getting to talk with you this morning about Supercell. I genuinely can't wait to see what you do in the future, and I'm looking forward to your next film as well. Job well done with Supercell, Jamie.
Thank you, Debbie. I really appreciate the interview.
I hope we get to do it again in the future.
Absolutely. The next movie, we're doing this again.
I promise we will. Jamie, thank you so much, and you have a good release day, St. Patrick's Day, sister's birthday tomorrow.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.